We often assume better decisions come from having more intelligence, more experience, or more information. It is an understandable assumption because knowledge gives us confidence that we can analyze situations accurately and reach sensible conclusions. Yet, history repeatedly shows that highly intelligent people make poor decisions. Successful executives overlook obvious warning signs. Experienced leaders become committed to failing strategies. Entire organizations continue investing in projects that no longer make sense. The issue is rarely a lack of intelligence. More often, it's the way the human mind processes information. Long before logic enters the conversation, our brains are already filtering, interpreting, and prioritizing what we notice. Those mental shortcuts help us navigate daily life efficiently, but they can also distort judgment without us ever recognizing it. Understanding those patterns is one of the most valuable leadership skills a person can develop, because better decisions begin with understanding how we think before we evaluate what we think. The brain looks for efficiency, not accuracy. The human brain processes an extraordinary amount of information every day. If we consciously analyzed every conversation, every email, every meeting, and choice we make, we would quickly become overwhelmed. Instead, the brain creates shortcuts. It groups information into familiar patterns, predicts what it is likely to happen next, and fills in the gaps using previous experience. Most of the time, this works remarkably well because it allows us to make thousands of small decisions without exhausting our mental resources. The difficulty in those same shortcuts can influence important leadership decisions. Instead of examining every situation objectively, we naturally compare it to what feels familiar. We notice information that fits our existing expectations more easily than information that challenges them. This happens automatically. It's not a sign of poor judgment. It's simply how the mind operates. The first explanation we hear often becomes the reference point from everything that follows. Even when new information becomes available, our minds naturally compare it with that initial impression instead of evaluating it independently. Think about the last time a project was introduced with a specific budget, deadline, or probability of success. Although those figures may have been rough estimates, they immediately become established as a benchmark or mental benchmark. As the discussion continued, every new piece of information was unconsciously measured against that starting point, rather than being considered on its own merit. That tendency can quietly shape strategic decisions. Leadership may believe they are responding to new evidence when in reality they are simply making small adjustments around the idea that was never properly questioned in the first place. Recognizing that influence makes it easier to pause, reassess the original assumptions, and decide whether it still deserves to guide the conversation. One of the most expensive mistakes organizations make is continuing with a decision simply because so much has already been invested in it. Time has been spent, money has been committed, and people have worked hard to make the project succeed. Walking away feels or begins to feel like admitting failure. The difficulty is that previous investments tell us nothing about whether continuing is the right choice today. Every decision should be evaluated using the information available now, rather than the effort already invested yesterday. Otherwise, organizations risk committing even more resources to an approach that is no longer creating value. Strong leadership, or strong leaders, understand that changing direction is not the same as giving up. Sometimes the wisest decision is recognizing that circumstances have changed and that continuing for the sake of consistency would create greater losses than making a difficult adjustment. It is easy to assume that people disagree because they have access to different information. More often, they disagree because they interpret the same information diversely. A sales director may look at falling revenue and conclude that the organization needs a more aggressive growth strategy. A finance director may argue that spending should be reduced until conditions improve. Neither person is ignoring the evidence. Each is viewing it through the priorities and experience that shape their perspective. That is why healthy discussions are so valuable. When leaders understand that different interpretations are inevitable, they become less interested in defending their own viewpoint and more interested in understanding why someone else has reached a different conclusion. That shift often produces stronger decisions because it broadens the range of possibilities before a final choice is made. Improving judgment rarely depends on being more intelligent. It depends on being more disciplined in the way we think. One helpful habit is separating the facts facts from conclusions before discussing the solution. Another is deliberately asking someone to change the preferred option before a final decision is made. Leaders can also benefit from asking what information is missing rather than focusing on what is already available. These practices do not eliminate bias completely because no leader thinks objectively all the time. What they do is reduce the influence of unconscious assumptions, making decisions more balanced, more deliberate, and more resilient when circumstances begin to change. By consistently applying these habits, leaders create teams that think more critically, challenge ideas more constructively, and become increasingly capable of solving complex problems together. The quality of our decisions depends on far more than intelligence or experience. It depends on recognizing that every leader is influenced by mental shortcuts that shape what they notice, what they ignore, and how to interpret the information in front of them. The most effective leaders do not assume they are objective. They build habits that challenge their own thinking, welcome different perspectives, and create enough space to examine the evidence before reaching a conclusion. Those habits do not eliminate bias completely, but they make it far less likely that hidden assumptions will quietly shape important decisions. Better judgment is not about having all the answers, but thinking about better questions, remaining curious, and being willing to rethink your position when new evidence deserves your attention. Please comment below, what thinking habit do you believe has the greatest impact on better leadership decisions? Don't forget to hit the like button, the bell for notifications, and subscribe to TIDAL Coach so you can join a community that's redefining what modern leadership looks like. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching.